I would like to take you through some graphics of Guwahati. I'll stand, I think that will be better. On the one hand, you have this beautiful river with backdrop hills. And this is what we made our city into. Another graphic, green open spaces. And today, if you want to move from one point A to point B, this is what you encounter in the city. This is true for most of the cities in the country. I'm just telling about Guwahati. Beautiful places, water bodies around the city. And thanks to planning, we have landed up with water within the city. All right? So, there must be something wrong in the urban planning that we're doing. You know, the backdrop of urban planning is 1860s, roughly, industrial revolution. You had cities in squalid condition, and they coined the term, city of the dreadful night. People were fearful. In the night, you would die, either through some disease, I'm talking about London primarily, or someone would stab you. You would be fearful. Night would be dreadful. So you're lucky if you're alive as you go out the next day. That is the backdrop on which urban planning was based on. I come back to Guwahati, 2018. Yesterday, there was a big rain, and I was dreading, how do I go home? In Guwahati, if you are somewhere in the city and it rains heavily, you're fearful. You don't know whether you'll reach your home. So, you know, that's what we have done to our city. We have gone back to 1870s of London. Now, so there must be something seriously wrong, or what we have made of our cities. And I'm taking the example of Guwahati. I begin with some constraints. Now, Assam, urbanization, or Northeast, had been primarily driven by administration. Towns came up because the Britishers put up capitals for administrative purposes. So the urban development growth or driver has been mostly administrative, and there are serious implications for that. Okay? Now, normally in an urban governance model, you would have these three stakeholders in being equal participant, equal pressure group, etc., etc. So the state, market, and the civil society. That would be an idealized framework. Thanks to our historical baggage, in our urban governance framework, we had a state which is preponderance, market comes next, and I will come to something more specifically later on, and the community is invisible. So the civil society is not there at all, brushed aside. That's the governance model that we adopted, right? Now, consequence of that, you have two major agencies which is governing urban development in Guwahati. One is called the Guwahati Metropolitan Development Authority, which is parastatal. It doesn't have people representation, it's a bureaucratic body. And then you have the municipal corporation, which is the legitimate people organization, which is small. I'll just give you an example of that. This came up primarily because that agencies cannot do work, they don't have the capabilities, etc., etc., etc. Despite the 74th Amendment, which gave strong legitimacy to this, despite that, you still had this body. They encroached in all the functions of municipality except the sanitary functions. One important function they encroach upon is the master plan and building plan, giving permission for building plans, primarily regulating growth. So this is something people was invisible. I'm not saying everything is hunky-dory with GMC, the municipal corporation. There are issues on structural reforms, etc. of that, but this body, had by design, is a people's body. So this is the mechanism, and this is true for all across Northeast. Parastatal organization taking over all functions of urban development. We know the best. Bureaucrats, town planners, I was there, you have a town planner here sitting here. We know the best. No one else is part of this. Ironically, now I come down to where everything takes place, that is land. Ironically, something different is happening there. In the land management, very ironically, state becomes very small. What happens is the market takes over. So, where the state should have been, you don't see it at all. For instance, in Guwahati, or I would say whatever development has happened in Guwahati, is basically the land brokers who plan the city. So the land brokers bought land, made parcels, made roads, and he decided what to have, what to come, despite the master plan. And we will see what why this link, this link or disconnection. So it was this market, and as a result, whatever you see in the master plan was not translating in the ground, right? So the ideal situation for our land development should have been, I'm talking about two good, the government agencies, and then we are talking about the private bodies, cooperative societies, etc. Land assembly, how land will be assembled, is part of the government. Government will have the major role there. Infrastructure, it reduces. And finally, occupancy, you would have government's role less. Who would occupy? Private people, right? People like you and me, etc. For the private societies, it is an inverted. So they would occupy, but they would have very little role in the land assembly, pooling land, etc. What was happening actually is that the private sector was doing all of these. A little bit of infrastructure coming in from the government. So you have a dysfunctional city. Result is this. So you have this as a template across Northeast. I'll just give you a statistics in terms of the master plan. Proposed is the red ones, actual is the yellow ones. Proposed in the master plan. Parts proposed, actual almost negligible. Agriculture proposed, obviously all agriculture has moved to residential. So the entire city, thanks to these private land brokers, they ensured every parcel of land went for commercial, either for office or primarily for residential purposes, at the cost of all other parks, community lands, etc., etc. So you had a master plan, planned out with what we call as norms. Planning is normative, and this translates into this. and with severe implications for the city. Results which I said just now, that you get fearful to travel at night when it's raining very heavily in Guwahati. We do not have an urban land management policy. We left it mostly to these land brokers to do this land management, and obviously it created a very inequitable city. Definitely not a place for the poor to stay, because poor cannot pay. So a highly inequitable city, and they have been priced out. Where do they go? They go up the hills. They go in near Bhorolu, along the Holur bank, etc., etc. So you price them out, because all land are meant to be transacted, meant to get money. So one of the major themes have been at Guwahati is that the result of all these floods have been the poor. They've gone up the hills, they cut the hills, so they're clogging all the drainage channels, etc., etc. But is the city providing land? Sorry, we kept mum about that. Where will these people stay? Sorry, we don't know. Guwahati, just to give you an idea about how much of these people are. And I think most of you are from Northeast and outsiders, if you happen to come to the city during some festival, Bihu or name it, you will see a city, you will think, is it Guwahati? It will become very silent. A lot of these people move back home in order to give you an understanding of how much informal workers and households are there in the city. It is huge. They provide services of untamed nature, which all of us know. Guwahati, I'm talking about primarily, they do much more than other cities. So there are these people who are providing all these services, and yet the city has no place for them, thanks to what I said just now. And of course, there is this land is an industry. I'll just give you an example from another thing that I did, not related to urban land, but land in general for Assam. We did some work some time back for NABARD. They asked us to go and have a look, because land computerization is something that is very strongly propagated across the country. They have been funded, state governments have been funded. The idea is that once computerization of land records takes place, particularly for the rural areas, it would mean that the farmer's lands gets documented, and tomorrow if he needs credit, he goes to the bank, and since the banker has this in his computer, he can access it, see it, and provide money immediately by putting a lien on that land. That's happening very, very beautifully in Karnataka and southern states. So they asked us, kindly have a look, because this computerization process also is taking place in Assam. What is the status? This is for mostly rural, but I'm giving you some sort of a political, bureaucratic nexus, which is very strong, evident in the urban areas. So we checked up. Yes, computerization is taking place. So in the sub-registrar office where land transaction takes place, there is computerization. In the circle office where you keep the records, there is computerization. In the DC's office where the final this one is kept, there is computerization, but they are not linked. So you have the registrar office computerization process, then you get a printout, then there is a peon who will take this to the circle office, get it put there again, and then it is computerized. Again he takes a printout, goes up to DC office and does that. Now simple, this looks like just a simple link. We have something called SWAN. Why this was not done? Why this is not being done? And no one wants this to happen. There is a strong link of money transaction which is happening here. It is almost an industry. So there is a strong political and which doesn't allow this to happen. So there is this status quo that I would like to maintain at the cost of all other people, especially the poor. All right, and this is very evident for Guwahati. In fact, they came up with some time back, I think last year or year before last, one act, Land Grabbers Act or something like that, to thwart this, but I think that still remains. So of course, you have a land use plan without the stakeholder, it defeats the very purpose, the plan that you are making. We have a master plan made which is not linked to what is happening in the ground. Now there are mechanisms for doing that. In Assam, we're not having that. So we have the master plan and that's it. So the link with the ground is missing. It has been always a mechanism to control, more to regulate rather than guide development. So there is a structural problem in the land use plan. It should normally be to guide development. Now, one, we know for sure the markets are going to definitely play a role in allocation of land. And then we have now new frames, or I would say strong stakeholders, the banks, the housing finance companies, which finance for land development. So you have that coming up very strongly. So this is there. Let me take an example for Guwahati. We have not been thinking creatively. I'm now looking at the master plan itself, and I'll come to the link a little later. Even in the allocation of land, we have been following a mechanism where we have been putting land for industries, standard practices. Whereas manufacturing and industries play a very, very small, negligible role in the economy of Northeast. Our economy is service. So we need land allocated for something else. For instance, again, let me take a case of Guwahati. Again, thanks to land not being available, we have done something of a illegitimate process for getting land for educational hub. Guwahati is increasingly becoming an educational hub in the sense that you have many universities, engineering colleges, etc. coming in. There is this, on the way, on the national highway, this university called Royal Global University, RGU, with a massive campus. So they needed land. There was nothing in the master plan for big universities, etc. There is land for industry. So what do? So what he did was, he went and took land in the green belt. There is something called green belt in master plans. Green belt to ensure that you have greenery, that you restrict growth, etc. So this guy got a land in the green belt, and together with him, all other girls also, a whole bandwagon got into the green belt. And well, it's a matter of only wiping the green out of the master plan. So they came back and did a what they call amendment to that, and Greenbelt, lo and behold, Greenbelt became a developed plot. So throw the master plan out of the window, right? Now you also have to keep in mind that this person required the land. So I think as planners, if you don't think creatively, then you will have problems like this. So yes, on the one hand, so I think even in the planning exercise, creative thinking is something that in the master plan making is something that is, I think, isn't been an issue. To link up the top to the bottom, how do I ensure whatever I said in a master plan translates into actual? Now there are three strategies in India that we adopted. One is a bulk land acquisition, which is very costly, and for the state of Assam, which is a relatively poor state, very difficult. TDS followed mostly in very, very developed cities like Bombay, especially in the urban centers. But I would like to draw your attention to this last, the land pooling mechanism, the town planning schemes. Just recently, I think, last week, I think, Guwahati has been put up as one of the cities which will get into this. And what is a town planning scheme? Very simplistically said, you have a master plan made, and then the town planning schemes are basically you have this huge master plan, and then you want to translate that into reality. So you go down to more neighborhood level, small plan. You mark out what are the things to be done, but that marking will not translate into reality. You have to deal with people who have land. So what you do is, you say this is an area allocated for town planning schemes. Tell the owners, look here, your land transactions are frozen for some period, a year or so. You cannot do land transactions. We will make a master plan of your entire area. Your land remains with you, but you will get a little less land because some of your land will go to roads, to go to parks. Now why will the persons agree that my land goes somewhere else? I will agree because once a developed plot comes in, my value goes up many, many times. So this is the mechanism used very, very creatively for states like Gujarat, Maharashtra. There are issues, but to begin with, in an area where we don't have it, this could be a wonderful way to go ahead. And I think that is something that we are probably going to happen under the new Smart City thing. Now obviously it helps in implementation, land allocation. And like I said, we get the land users without giving money. A little money of course goes in, but not that huge money that is required for bulk acquisition. So you get land, you ensure that the land gets parceled out well, you ensure all the things happen in the sense allocation of various users are there, etc., including land for the poor. You have designated percentage of land that you kept for EWS. So for each town planning schemes, you have land allocated for the poor. All right? So you ensure that allocation that takes place. So you have a city which is much more caring. A city which is much more inclusive. So you're using the land as a resource to fund development. Because as you know, developed plot, the value goes up. So you're using the land to guide development. So it is a way where the owners feel happy. It's a way where you get land for various purposes. You make a city much more, like I said, cared, inclusive. Right? That is something that we have totally missed in this part of the country. And hence, a highly inequitable city of poor. Just to give you an idea of the issues. Now I'll come to a little bit because this one was on urban poverty. So I move now seamlessly to this topic from land because that's where everything happens. So I thought this was something that we need to talk about. Now there is this issue of counting of poor. How do we count poor in Northeast? We have slums, fixed in space, and we have the numbers. Who are these slums? Mostly the Safai Karmacharika quarters. You know, we have these sanitation workers, they have these usually in and around that. And hence, most of the poor is invisible. A lot of times, they also would like to be invisible because legitimacy can lead to problems. So I also would like to be a little invisible, but in otherwise, in our workings, we have this poor which is invisible. So large number of poor is not counted. So if I say that well, poor do not have land. Kitna hai poor? 5, 10 slums. I mean, I'm just giving a very skewed figure. 10 slums of 20,000 people. Not an issue. Sorry, sir. Most of the poor stay in different places. So they are not at all seen there. Fixation of space, which is very typically bureaucratic way of looking at things, because poor circulate, move. And like I said, land not being within themselves, moving into areas which are illegitimate, illegal, etc. So if we don't tackle this more fundamental problem, two fundamental problems. The first fundamental problem of governance, if we don't place municipal corporation as the legitimate controlling or the authority looking after the affairs of the city, giving it the right place, and allowing our parastatal organization actually below it, 1. 2, not having a land management mechanism of ensuring land coming to the poor, you would always have this problem of tackling poverty. Poor in Northeast or in Guwahati. Because when you're just providing some land, you're just providing, some houses, you're just tackling at the peripheral issue. The major structural issue is not looked at all. So my contention is that these two fundamental problems, if not tackled, would always have a problem. I mean, we'll always have a problem in dealing with urban poverty. We do have a problem in all across the country still, and there are issues, and I think some of them probably have been, because you've been here for last 6 days, have been probably talked about. We are at the beginning, because structurally itself there is a problem. So there is a structural problem that we need to correct, and hence I said, rather than going into urban poverty, I said let me talk about the more fundamental problems that ensures that urban poverty actually perpetuates. And only then, I think, and this would also affect what I'm saying, that we would not have a city of dreadful night. And we will have a Guwahati where I can travel when the rains come. I don't have to think about traveling. I was worried yesterday. There was, my Jeep was a SUV and the driver was having a problem. I said, oh, now how do I go in? So I hope if we tackle these, I think we can go back to a city which is much more inclusive, caring, resilient, and not a city of dreadful night. Thank you.